Hello, and welcome to another episode of Crypto Novus, where newbies become masters. Hello, my name is Chris Brown, and I'm your host this evening. What do I want to talk to you tonight about? Bitcoin scarcity. This is not a new conversation in the marketplace. This conversation came up originally when only 21 million coins were created. Right now, we have about 18.5 million coins that have been mined. We have another 2.5 to be mined. We have a halving again at 2024. And then at 2041, the last Bitcoin will be mined. Now, all of these factors impact supply and demand, but the real big question is, what does it mean to you as you're doing your investing, as you're doing your trading, as you're hodling, or whether or not you choose to play in the altcoin market or not? All of these facts mean something to you. And so I kind of want to go into the information that I've discovered as I'm trying to educate myself in this space, and so that I can make the wisest decisions possible. So come along with me. I'll share the information, and along the way, hopefully you become educated. And of course, if you like the information, please hit the like button down below. And of course, just subscribe to the channel. So this was an article I found on AMB Crypto, and it was a very good one. It talked about, what happens, and this was written on Saturday, what happens if Bitcoin stays above 18K, and which it basically did. It hovered between like 18.2 to about 18.8 or 9. And the article proceeds to discuss, the supply shortage narrative and its impact on the altcoin market. So as I mentioned before, there's 18 million Bitcoin that have been mined. The current market capitalization value of the marketplace of the digital asset is 345 billion. And of course, there is 2.5 million coins left to be mined. The key thing in this paragraph right here, though, is the next sentence, where it basically says is, Bitcoin is being presently pulled out of exchanges at an exceeding rate than is being mined per quarter. And we'll take a look at some information towards the tail end that kind of reinforces this. So what's the value of this? The value is here. The number of active Bitcoin addresses has increased in the past quarter. And what does that do? It basically increases demand. With the exchanges not having the demand that the public wants in order to trade, what is beginning to happen is people are beginning to take profits out of Bitcoin, and they're moving them over into the altcoin arena, which we can definitely see today. The prices for XRP all the way up to 64 cents. We have ADA, Cardano, that's sitting up around 17 cents. The altcoins have seen, 50% increases in the last week, 25% increases within a day. So it's been an amazing bull run just for the altcoins in the last 5 days. The article goes on to state that basically by holding Bitcoin, what it basically does is increases the demand for it and continues to increase the price. And that makes a lot of sense to me, because I think one of the other narratives that is out there is that Bitcoin's going to see a correction, but there's a strong push to reach that $20,000 all-time high again before that correction happens. At this point, I haven't had a chance to really analyze it one way or the other, so I'm not sure which way I think at this point it's going to go. Personally, I hope it corrects before it hits that. That's my personal preference, because I think it's the more sound direction it should take at this point. The article goes on basically to say that people are unwilling to part with, their Bitcoin. Some are saying it's because of the pandemic, and they're beginning to trust, Bitcoin as a digital asset, as digital gold, and as something that's going to increase in value and give them an edge against the other fiat currencies that are around, which I really believe. And the article concludes that, back in 2017, this sentiment wasn't the same. there was, yes, a lot of activity and a lot of enthusiasm in Bitcoin back in 2017, therefore driving the price up. But the bear period that followed after was very, very long, and people were beginning to obviously lose faith in Bitcoin. But that faith and trust has definitely come back, and has come back in a very, very large way. So the next question I ask is, okay, so, with the 18.5 million mined coins, where is their distribution? Where have they landed? Because as an investor, that means something to me in terms of my accessibility to it. And then also, who's really controlling the marketplace? Who are the whales? Who are the big buyers that can influence price depending on whether or not they choose to sell, to buy, to drive up price or not? This article is another good resource that kind of begins to explain that. So this article is written back in October of 2020, so it's a little bit old, maybe a little over a month. So some of the numbers will be changed, obviously, now. But again, it talks about around 18.5 million coins in circulation. What it opened my eyes to was this information on coin metrics, which is a look at Bitcoin as an asset and what essentially has happened to the coins. And so, of course, there's coins that have been lost that will, that were mined and will never be circulated again. And therefore, that will reduce the 21 million in supply. And right now, they're assuming there's about 1.5 million Bitcoin that have been lost. And this chart right here was written back in almost a year ago, 2019. The other chart that I'm going to show you, which is really impressive, really kind of begins to outline, who has bought Bitcoin, and what institutions and what individuals. So when this article was written, there was about 2.6 million Bitcoin, and here's the I'll highlight the area. This chart, there was about 2.6 million Bitcoin on exchanges, which account for about 12% of the 21 million supply. I'm going to show you some information at the end that changes that number from 2.6 to about 2.3. So as we scroll down and look at the chart, the first orange section is basically the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust. They have about 450,000 BTCs. Then the next one is how many Bitcoin are mined per year, which is about 328,000 coins. You've got, there was a plus token scam, which there were about 200,000 Bitcoin were involved in that particular situation. You've got about another 166,000 with Mt. Gox wallets. I'm not sure what those are. 150,000 owned by the Winklevoss twins, which some of you have probably heard about them. There was another 120,000 in the Bitfinex hacker situation, and 120,000 BTC on Ethereum. So this chart kind of puts it in a picture to where you can kind of digest the information, but I'm going to blow this up just to kind of give you an idea of what the circulation really, in fact, looks like. Each one of these little squares basically represents 1,000 Bitcoin. So here it says 2.45 Bitcoin on exchanges. So these are all the Bitcoins that are on exchanges. Then we've got the zombie coins. They're saying about 1.7. Then here's the Grayscale Trust. Of course, now the orange, the yellow, the green, the blue, those are the colors that we saw before on the other chart. But it does continue to scroll down. You can kind of see 55,000 Bitcoin bought by M. Saylor and MicroStrategy, 30,000 coins by Tim Draper, which I'll do some videos on him in the future. And then these pink ones are the supply, the rest of the circulation that are presently in supply, which are owned by a variety of people, including yourself. And these gray ones are the ones that are to be remained. To me, the reason why I wanted to show this is when you see this graphic representation, that's all that's left to be mined. And this is what's in circulation right now. It gives you a good graphic representation of what's out there in terms of supply and demand and the distribution, which impacts us considerably as investors, as hodlers, and as traders. So another contributing factor to the Bitcoin asset supply crisis, in quotations, is the fact that Bitcoin is how Bitcoin are being used or wrapped with other digital assets. So Binance has what is called BTCB, and it's a wrapped coin asset intended to bring liquidity to the world's largest cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, through the Binance Smart Chain decentralized finance ecosystem. So what does this essentially mean? It means that in order for this BTCB to work, they have to basically lock in a Bitcoin. And that what that does is it takes that Bitcoin off the market for circulation and trading. Another wrapped asset is WBTC, which is a wrapped Bitcoin token on Ethereum. And it's actually kind of ranked number 14 on the cryptocurrency list. And I'll have to take a look at that because I have not been paying attention, to be quite honest, to that. But what does this boil down? What it says is down here in this paragraph, according to what Binance calls proof of assets page, currently there are over 9,600 Bitcoin on BSC, which is worth $181 million. There's the kicker right there. How many of these coins are wrapped up just in this particular asset alone? So the next piece of information, an article is about, as you can see the title, seller shortage, Bitcoin exchange reserves plunging as BitMEX bleeds BTC. So this was written again, about a month ago, middle of October, and they're very specific. They talk right here about exchanges. Basically says Bitcoin exchange reserves are continuously plummeting as analysts pinpoint trend towards shortage of sellers. So in March, when the March crash hit, the reserves on exchanges fell from 2.9 million to 2.7 million. Article goes on to continue to talk about the number of sellers dropping in the midst of accumulation. And this quote is really interesting. More and more Bitcoin getting out from exchanges and mostly probably being transferred to non-custodial wallets. This suggests lower liquidity and lower selling pressure going forward. Bottom line is going to keep price up. This quote touches on something else, and that is, to be honest, more and more BTC going from exchanges towards cold wallet storage, big listed companies allocating cash reserves to BTC is incredibly bullish. And one example of that would be, of course, Square and PayPal. So here, this little quote basically gives us kind of another window as to what's going on. So essentially over the past few months, 2.6 million Bitcoin, about 14% of the supply, are being held in accumulation addresses. So now I want to go to another page, another site that gave me a little bit more insight and depth, and that's this one. It's called Glassnode, and this is a really interesting site. I've never been on it before until tonight. And it gives me a lot of information about Bitcoin. The window's cropped just slightly. But what I want to focus in on is right here. And that is basically exchange balances are sitting right now, because this is the most current information, at 2.3, just under 2.4 million BTC. And it's down 0.13%. So what this page essentially did for me is it validated the other articles, because the articles, they were spouting out facts, but where was the resources really to it? But this tells me right here that yes, in fact, the exchanges are low. And there are some other charts in here where, when Bitcoin was circulating before, exchanges like the one article I'd mentioned was as high as 2.9 million. So again, the availability of the coin is a lot more liquid. Therefore, the price, there's going to be, more pressure for selling and so the price would obviously begin to be more flexible and drop. In this case, that's not where we sit today. So what exactly does all this now mean? So let me kind of sum all this up for myself. There was 4 things I mentioned before, and one was investing. How does this information, change the way that I might invest? Well, clearly, it tells me that it reinforces the fact we're in a bull market. It reinforces the fact that prices are going to be pushed up, and so what it means to me is, as I need to be very careful about if I'm going to trade when I sell and when I buy. I may be less risky going forward as price continues to push up, because like the altcoins did this weekend, they catapulted in just 2 or 3 days and went up 50%. And so if you get caught on the wrong end of that trade, that wouldn't be good news for you, right? In terms of hodling, yeah, I'm going to continue to hold. I'm going to protect some of the coins. I may have some that I use for just trading, but the other ones I'm going to put away and just let sit for a little while. Which for some of you that are big traders, you're like thinking, oh, holding's not the best thing. But for some people who are more conservative, it might be the best choice. And then lastly, on terms of the altcoins, I'm going to look at the altcoins and I'm going to look at the price action on altcoins a lot differently going forward. Again, I know we're in a bull market. I know they're going to go up, but they might climb a whole lot quicker and faster than I would anticipate. So that's going to change a little bit on how I play the game with the altcoins. So again, I hope this information was helpful for you. It's been a little bit longer of a video than I thought, but I found it interesting. Hope you did as well. Again, my name is Chris Brown. This is Crypto Novus. And remember, this is where newbies become masters. Have a good night.